it's safe to say that anything that is still being used effectively after 70 plus years has some value to it. And so that can be said of the triangle offense. And I think that the value comes because of four main areas that the triangle has. The first one is spacing. The great Rick Majerus used to constantly emphasize that offense is spacing, spacing is offense. And I think that is very true with the triangle. Because all players on the floor are somewhere between 15 and 20 feet apart, it makes everybody on the floor an offensive threat. It also makes everybody on the floor a target for the next pass. And that promotes involvement, it promotes teamwork, it makes it extremely hard to guard. It puts a lot of pressure on the defense. Some offenses need a lot of movement to be able to function effectively. That's not necessarily true of the triangle, although you can run it with a lot of movement, almost like it's like a 4 out 1 in motion offense. You can also run it with the players very stationary. Because the spacing is so good, it makes it extremely difficult to double onto the ball without leaving somebody wide open. And so depending on the skill set of your players, sometimes the spacing alone creates good offense with or without movement. The second advantage it has is flexibility. There are multiple entries into the triangle, and there are dozens of sets that can be run if you're inclined to have a little bit more control over the offense. If you want to have a little bit more control in crunch time, who is shooting the ball, there are dozens of sets that can be run. The offense can be anything you want it to be. It can be a post-oriented offense like it was when Shaq was playing with the Lakers. It can be a wing and slasher type offense like it was with the Bulls with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Even today's Golden State Warriors run a form of the triangle, and they are using it to get 3 after 3 after 3. So the offense can be anything that you want it to be without changing the offense. I think it can take advantage of mismatches just by making a little tweak here and there, or by putting a specific player in a specific spot will force the defense into isolation, or will force the defense into over helping, which is going to leave you wide open shots. I think maybe the thing that I like most about it is that it plays to players' strengths. If you have a player that can just hit threes, there's a spot for him in the triangle. If you have a kid who's just a driver but only an average shooter, there's a spot for him in the triangle. Those kids who are a slasher, if you have someone who can just post up and whose range is about 3 feet, there's a place for him in the triangle offense. And so what this does is it allows you to play your best players. We've all had that one kid who's a great defender or a glue guy or a great hustle type player, but we just don't know where he would fit in the offense that we run. In the triangle, there's a spot for everybody. And I think that goes a long way towards its success because it'll let you play your best players. I like it because it's positionless. We all have big kids that like to play outside every once in a while. We all have guards who like to get inside and bang around and mix it up underneath the basket. You can do that in this offense. Another thing is that we all have players, or have had players over the years. Maybe we have a wing who's your best outside shooter, but he also happens to be your backup point guard and your third best post player. So it's a kid that you need in the game all the time. Well, so what happens when you take that best shooter and now you have to play him at the point, or you have to play him inside? Do you have to switch offenses and go to something completely different because your best player is now playing a different spot. With the triangle, you don't have to do that. You can run the same offense because every player knows every spot. And so you can continue to run the offense regardless of what personnel you have in the game. The fourth thing is it's a true read and react type offense. It's not a set offense where I pass here and run 3 steps here and then 4 steps over here. It is based on read and react. The ball handler, the player with the ball, his primary job is to read the defense. And then he makes a decision whether to shoot, pass, or drive. And then he reacts appropriately. The other 4 players on the floor just need to read the player with the ball. And then they need to react appropriately. And then once that happens, it becomes extremely difficult to scout. And again, it becomes really hard to guard because it is so unpredictable at times. Now you take those 4 things, and to me, you add them all up, and it equals something that I personally feel is really important in running an offense, and that is it's fun. The players like to run it. You know, when Phil Jackson was coaching both the Bulls and the Lakers, you would hear a lot of players that were really hesitant about going to those teams because they were a little intimidated by the triangle. They thought maybe it was a little too complex, or maybe it was a little too much passing for the way that they like to play. But you never heard a single player that played on either those really good Bulls teams or those really good Lakers teams, or even some of those teams that have run it since. And currently, you know, several NBA teams are running part of the triangle as their general everyday offense. You've never heard a single player who's been immersed in the offense and has learned all the ins and outs of it and all the scoring options come back and say that they didn't like playing that offense, because it's fun. Players like playing in it, and they get better. It helps improve their game and makes them better all-around offensive players. And the fact that it's fun and that it helps players improve certainly encourages and promotes buy-in, so that your players are buying into your offensive philosophy. And personally, I think that goes a long way.